If stories about broken people, exposing beautiful lies, and somehow finding a real home in the middle of the mess make your chest ache in the best way, stay with this one until the very end. And if Mara and Rowan's journey hits something deep inside you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next slow, healing story we share on this channel. By the time Mara Ellis reached the baggage carousel at JFK, her body had gone past tired and into something numb. The overhead lights buzzed. The crowd pressed in on all sides, a blur of wheeled suitcases and impatient sighs. Her flight from Seattle had landed 40 minutes late. Her eyes burned from recycled air and 3 hours of trying not to cry in the dark. On the carousel, black suitcases slid by in an endless parade. Hers was simple matte black, scuffed on one corner, with a generic luggage tag that had once been white. She spotted it, or thought she did, and stepped forward. Same size, same scuffed corner, same cheap handle. Her fingers closed around it. It was heavier than she remembered, but she was too exhausted to question it. She hauled it off the carousel, the wheels rattling over a crack in the floor, and let the momentum pull her toward the exit. Outside, the air smelled like jet fuel and damp concrete. A cab dropped her in front of her building in Brooklyn, a narrow place with peeling paint and a stairwell that creaked complaints at every step. Inside her apartment, the silence hummed. She set the suitcase on the sagging couch and flicked on the lamp. Light pooled weakly in one corner, revealing the familiar chipped mug on the table, the leaning stack of audit textbooks she still couldn't bring herself to throw away, the plant in the window that refused to die. Home, she said to no one, and the word felt thin. She popped the suitcase latches. The lid swung open. She froze. No jeans, no faded sweater, no thrift store jacket, no shoes with the worn soles she knew too well. Instead, neatly folded shirts she would never buy, a sleek leather toiletry bag, a binder stamped with a logo she recognized from every finance headline of the last 3 years. Hallicor Capital. Her stomach dropped. On top of the binder lay a slim metal drive, the kind you plugged in when you didn't want anything touching the cloud. Beside it, clipped to the first page, was a business card. Rowan Hale, CEO. Mara stared. Her own name printed in faded ink on her original luggage tag was nowhere in sight. Well, she whispered, voice dry. That's not good. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. She answered on reflex. You took the wrong bag. The voice was low, gender neutral through whatever software was flattening it. Calm, almost bored. Her throat went tight. Who is this? She asked him. It doesn't matter, the voice said. What matters is that you put everything back in that suitcase and do not read what's inside. Her gaze dropped to the binder. Confidential was printed in red across the cover. Too late, she lied. Tomorrow, the voice went on, ignoring her at 10 a.m. Hale Court Tower, 26th floor reception. Bring the bag. Don't be curious. The line went dead. Mara lowered the phone slowly. Sure, she muttered. I'll just stop being what I am. Curious? Obsessive. Oshiem. The woman who had once built a career on noticing the one number that didn't fit, and then lost that career for refusing to ignore it. She should close the suitcase, she told herself. Lock it and shove it into a corner. March into Hale Court in the morning, drop it on the floor, and walk out. Her fingers were already unfastening the binder clamp. You're an idiot, she whispered, and began to read. The pages smelled faintly of toner and money. Merger proposal Hale Court Capital and Phoenix Ridge Partners. Read the title. Columns of figures. Forward-looking statements. Risk assessments choked with jargon. She scanned with the old, bitterly familiar part of her brain that still knew how to turn numbers into stories. Phoenix Ridge's asset list ran down one page. Line by line, she traced cash flows, projections, loan terms. Halfway down the second page, her heartbeat stumbled. A subheading regional hospitality portfolio. Beneath it, a neat table of expected revenue from a chain of coastal retreats. The numbers had a shape she recognized. Not just pattern shape, like handwriting, like a voice. She crossed the room, grabbed the old laptop from under the coffee table, opened it, and woke up a file she hadn't looked at in months. A case archive, the last major investigation she'd led before everything went sideways. A small-town healthcare fund that had looked too glossy to be real. She pulled up the data set, side by side, the rows lined up, same structure, same suspiciously smooth growth curve, same rounding habits, the same tiny, impossible coincidence, a string of repeating sevens in the third decimal place on revenue estimates. Her stomach twisted. Someone had lifted an old fraud she had already flagged and tried to bury, slapped a new label on it, and dropped it into a deal big enough to make headlines. "Don't be curious," the voice had said. Mara laughed once, a sharp, humorless sound. "Too late," she said again. Hale Court Tower stabbed the sky like a blade of glass. At 10, the lobby was a tide of tailored suits and polished shoes. Screens on the walls cycled through looping promo videos, dynamic graphs, smiling families. The words innovation, stability, trust. Mara felt underdressed in her cleanest shirt and black jeans. The borrowed suitcase rolled behind her, the sound of its wheels loud on the marble floor. At the 26th floor, a receptionist with impeccable hair and a neutral smile directed her to a glass-walled waiting area. "Mr. Hale will be with you shortly," she said. Mara sat on the edge of a chair that probably cost more than her rent. The city stretched out below in all directions, glittering and indifferent. The door to the inner office opened. He looked exactly like the headlines. Tall, dark hair, cut neat, suit that fit like it had been designed especially for his shoulders. A face that might have been handsome if it weren't set so carefully into neutrality. "Ms. Ellis," he asked. His voice was lower in person, cooler. She stood. "You're Rowan Hale," she replied. His gaze flicked to the suitcase. "Let's talk in my office," he said. He led her past the receptionist and into a room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a desk that could double as a runway. A single-frame photograph sat in one corner, a man in his 50s laughing on a sailboat, wind in his hair. Rowan closed the door behind them. "Thank you for bringing this back," he said, indicating the suitcase. "We'll have a courier return yours." "That'd be nice," she said. "I have exactly 3 work-appropriate shirts, and one of them is in there." He didn't smile. "I'm sure you were told not to look inside," he said. "Yes," she said. I'm not great with directions." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Those documents are confidential," he said. Reading them was a violation of what she cut in. Ethics, privacy. We throw in big words around now. He narrowed his eyes. "Of good sense, at the very least," he said. She let out a breath, short and sharp. "You're right," she said. "It was stupid of me." He opened his mouth. She went on. "Because once you see numbers like that," she said, "you can't unsee them." Silence stretched between them. He folded his arms. "What exactly do you think you saw?" he asked. She stepped closer to the desk, the binder still under her arm. Her hand rested on the cover. "Phoenix Ridge's regional hospitality returns," she said. Q-on-Q growth of 12 to 15% in markets that have been flat for 5 years. No corresponding jump in occupancy or price. Every anomaly smoothed into a perfect line. She flipped, open to the page, and tapped a set of figures with her finger. "This pattern," she said, "is identical to a fraudulent data set I investigated 18 months ago. Same rounding habits, same artificial curve. Somebody either got very lazy or is very sure no one will check." Rowan studied her face. "You're not a random, curious bystander," he said slowly. "I used to be a forensic auditor," she said. "I don't put that on my resumes anymore. It tends to get me uninvited from things." "Why?" he asked. "Because the last time I told a board they were being sold a fantasy," she replied, big, has she? "They ignored me. And then they blamed me when it fell apart." He sat on the edge of the desk, his posture loosening a fraction. "You worked on this data set?" he asked, tapping the page. "On the original," she said. "Different name, different shell. Same trick." "And you're sure?" he asked. She met his gaze. "I lost my career over being sure," she said. "So yes." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood. "Come with me," he said. The observation room felt like standing behind the eye of God. A wide pane of mirror glass stretched across the wall, reflecting Mara's face back at her in faint ghostly lines. On the other side, through the one-way glass, the Hale-Core boardroom lay in crisp, sleek detail. A long table, leather chairs, a huge screen glowing at one end, blue with a logo. Below them, people filtered in. Men and women in suits, laughter tight and polite. Tablets, water glasses, the clink of ice. Rowan stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "This is where my father used to watch," he said quietly. He called it his reality check seat. He'd look down here and ask himself if the people he'd chosen were the same people they were when no one was watching them for real. And now she asked, "And now I mostly use it to avoid making small talk before meetings," he said. On the other side of the glass, a man in his 40s with perfectly silvered hair took the seat nearest the screen. His suit was immaculate. His smile, when he greeted a colleague, was practiced. "That's Damien Locke," Rowan said, "our VP of Finance. We built Halecore back up together after things went sideways with some of my father's old partners." Damien's presentation began, flowing slides, clean logos, a voice that oozed confidence. "We project a 17% increase in managed assets within 12 months of closing," he said. "Combining Halecore's platform with Phoenix Ridge's regional footprint unlocks tremendous synergy." Mara watched the numbers dance across the screen. She recognized the hospitality projections instantly. The same impossible smoothness, the same curve. He spoke of risk in abstract terms: downside exposure, market volatility. No mention of real people, of neighborhoods, of community centers clinging to promised grants, and no one at the table asked for raw data. No one questioned the too perfect ascent. "They're not clueless," she murmured. "They know exactly what they're doing." And Rowan's jaw clenched. "They think the ends justify the means," he said. "That saving Halecore's position in the market is worth a little creativity in the midsection." "Is it?" she asked. His eyes stayed on the glass. "My father trusted people who said that," he said. "He died after signing away everything to men who called themselves visionaries." On the other side of the glass, Damien clicked to a slide labeled Contingency Provisions. A block of text shrank into a bullet point. "In the unlikely event of a market crisis," he said, "temporary control of key vote rights will pass to a neutral management vehicle to ensure stability." Mara's skin prickled. "A shell," she said. "Lovely." Rowan's gaze flicked to her. "You saw something?" he asked. "Not yet," she said, "but I smell it." The Queens Community Resource Center sat between a laundromat and a shuttered pawn shop. Its sign was faded. Its windows were filled with flyers, after-school tutoring, free meals, shelter referrals. Inside, the paint peeled, but the air buzzed with the sound of kids in low conversation. "Sorry, the office is a mess," June said, shuffling aside a stack of boxes. "We're mid-grant application." Again. Mara smiled. "It's okay," she said. "Controlled chaos. I like it." She spread the center's bank statements across the small desk. June poured coffee into paper cups. "If the merger goes through," June said, "we get another 2 years of funding from that community impact program." "Right, that's what they promised," Mara said. The numbers told a different story. Late disbursements, smaller checks, promises of bigger support after the Phoenix Ridge transaction closes. June rubbed her temples. "I told the kids we'd keep the homework help room open," she said. "They've already had enough taken away this year." Mara looked at her. "I'm not promising anything," she said quietly, "but I'm working on it." June smiled, weary but grateful. "You always were stubborn, Mara," she said. "Even when you were the intern who insisted on color-coding every file." Mara laughed softly. "I thought if I made everything neat enough," she said, "it would make the world behave." "How's that going?" June asked. Mara spread her hands over the messy desk. "Well," she said, "this is an upgrade from the last place I tried it." The train clattered through the tunnel, an iron heartbeat under the city. Mara sat opposite Rowan in the nearly empty subway car, the binder in her lap. The fluorescent light painted everything in shades of gray. Why did you bring me into that room, she asked. Rowan leaned his head back against the window, eyes closed for a moment. Because I needed someone who wasn't already invested in the story we've been telling ourselves, he said. And because you recognize that data set like a fingerprint, that fingerprint cost me my job, she said. He opened his eyes. What happened, he asked. She watched the tunnel wall blur by. I found a pattern, she said. Inflated assets, hidden losses. I took it to my partner. He'd been like an older brother. Said we'd go to the board. Said he'd stand next to me. She laughed. No humor in it. He stood next to me while I presented, she said. And then he told them my concerns were overblown. That stress was making me see ghosts. A month later, I was out. He took a promotion. Rowan was quiet. I thought speaking up would fix something, she said. All it did was shove me out of the room where decisions are made. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, edges softened by long handling. My father left this, he said, in a desk drawer arm. I found it after he died. He handed it to her. The handwriting was neat, a little shaky. Numbers mean nothing if the people behind them can't be trusted. Mara traced the line with her eyes. Sounds like he would have been fun at parties, she said softly. Rowan smiled, fleeting. He said, until the last one. The train slowed. A recorded voice announced the next stop. Mara folded the paper along its old crease, handed it back. You're not your father, she said. You get to pick a different ending. And if I pick wrong, he asked, then at least you'll know you didn't sign in the dark, she said. The resort wasn't supposed to look tired. The glossy Phoenix Ridge brochures showed sunlit decks and infinity pools. Couples in white robes, children leaping into clear water. What Mara saw when she and Rowan stepped out of the rental car was peeling paint and a pool closed for maintenance with leaves floating on the surface. A storm gathered out at sea, a dark line on the horizon. Charming, Mara said. Rowan's mouth tightened. This is one of their flagship assets, he said, according to Damien's presentation. Maybe the glamour is invisible to the naked eye, she said. The receptionist blinked when they checked in. We weren't expecting anyone else this week, he admitted. Weather scared people off. Lucky us, Rowan replied. He booked the only cabin available beachfront, 2 bedrooms, small living area. The kind of place that was supposed to smell like salt and luxury. Instead, it smelled like damp wood and old air freshener. Mara dropped her overnight bag on a chair and opened the curtains. The ocean glowered back at her, slate-colored under the thickening clouds. Do you trust him, she asked. Who, Rowan said, flipping through the room's binder. Damien, she said. Honestly. He stared at the page, not reading. I did, he said. He stayed when others left, helped put out fires I didn't start. And now she pressed. And now I'm wondering if he lit some of them himself, Rowan said. They spent the afternoon walking the property. The full occupancy Damien's slide had boasted looked more like 20%. Whole blocks of rooms dark. The restaurant staffed by 1 cook and a harried server. The spa closed for renovation with no sign of actual work. In the small, cluttered back office, Mara found a stack of invoices and bank statements. Payments from Phoenix Ridge were overdue. Vendors were calling. Staff hours were cut. On a dusty shelf, a binder held a projected renovations plan. It was several years old. Most of the work listed had never been done. Mara snapped photos with her phone, her jaw tight. Back in the cabin, the storm hit. Rain hammered the roof. Wind rattled the windows. The power sputtered and died. Well, she said at the sudden dark, at least it's on brand. Rowan laughed despite himself. He lit a couple of candles from the emergency kit and found an old gas stove in the kitchenette. Together, they rummaged through cabinets until they found cocoa powder and something that might be milk. The small living room glowed in flickers, 2 candles on the low table between the couch and the fireplace. You're sure you don't want me to draft a strongly worded email to Phoenix Ridge about their premier guest experience, Mara asked, cupping her hands around the warm mug. I'm sure Damien already has a deck explaining how the ambiance boosts retention, Rowan said dryly. Rain drummed on the roof. Mara's hair dripped onto her shoulders. She had abandoned her soaked sweater, left in a heap by the door. Her t-shirt clung damply to her skin. "Sit," Rowan said, getting up. He returned with a towel from the bathroom and tossed it at her gently. "You're going to catch a cold," he said. "You sound like June," she replied, but obeyed. She wrapped the towel around her shoulders and began rubbing her hair dry. The simple motion made something tight in her chest loosen. Rowan sat back down, closer this time. The candlelight softened the hard lines of his face. "You know what's funny?" she said. "What he asked, I used to think the worst thing numbers could do was lie," she said. "Now I think it might be the way they're used to excuse what people already want to do." He considered that. "My father would have liked you," he said. "High praise, coming from the ghost of Wall Street past," she replied. He huffed a quiet laugh. They fell into a silence that felt, strangely like rest. No presentations, no demands, just two people in the half-dark, listening to the storm spend itself on the walls. For the first time in a long time, Mara didn't feel like she was performing for anyone. She just existed, in damp socks, with a mug of cocoa, next to a man who, for all his edges, had let her see the places they came from. The house in Westchester sat back from the road, framed by overgrown hydrangeas. It looked less like the lair of a finance legend and more like the place your favorite teacher might live. White siding, a porch swing, wind chimes that tinkled in the breeze. Inside, dust motes hung in shafts of light. The furniture was covered with sheets, ghost outlines of chairs and side tables. Rowan pulled the sheet off a framed plaque by the door. "Tell the truth, even if it costs you." "Subtle," Mara said. "My father didn't do subtle," Rowan replied. They ended up at the kitchen table, which had been wiped down at some point, judging by the absence of dust. It was scarred and solid, the kind of table where homework and budget talks and late-night confessions happened. They spread the merger documents out, pages overlapping. Mara paged through until she found the signature page. Her finger traced the line under Rowan Hale. "This says you signed the final draft 3 weeks ago," she said. "At 9 p.m. "I didn't." He said, "We never had a final vote." "Metadata," she asked. He pulled out his laptop and checked. The file had been last modified by his account at that time. "Someone used your credentials," she said. "Damien has access," he replied. His voice was flat, controlled, like someone holding the door shut against a flood. Mara watched him for a moment. "What are you afraid of?" she asked softly. He looked up. "Losing Halecore," he said. "Letting it go under and proving everyone right when they said I shouldn't have taken it over. Watching my father's name become a joke again." "And you think signing a bad deal keeps that from happening?" she asked. "If we don't grow, we get eaten," he said. "That's how this works. Damien thinks this is the only way to keep us alive long enough to fix things. By lying about what we are," she said. "By surviving long enough to change," he countered. She leaned back. "I've heard this song," she said. "Different singer, same chorus. Sign now, fix later. Compromise a little so you can be good eventually." He flinched. "What did that get you?" he asked. "Blacklisted," she said. "Barista shifts. Freelance books for people who don't know or care who I used to be." He looked down at this table, at the papers between them. "I don't want that for Halecore," he said quietly. "Then don't repeat your father's mistake," she replied. "He trusted the wrong people. You're about to trust a deal they designed." They sat in silence, the weight of the choice pressing in. Outside, a wind chime rang. Rowan exhaled. "I need proof," he said. "Not just instinct." "Then we find it," she said. It found her first. Later that night, back in her apartment, the suitcase sat in the middle of the living room like an accusation. She had packed her own bag, worn clothes, the few personal things that mattered, and set it by the door, just in case. The Halecore suitcase, though, she hadn't touched again. Now, some impulse made her drag it closer and unzip the lining. Her fingers found a bulge in the fabric, a seam that wasn't quite even. She tugged. The false bottom lifted. A slim USB drive lay in the shallow compartment, taped to the underside. "Well, hello," she whispered. She plugged it into her laptop. 2 files appeared, Merger Original. Docs. Correspondence log per dat. Her heart thudded. She opened the merger file first. This version looked like the one she'd expect from a cautious legal team. Sensible risk clauses. No emergency transfer of control. Projections trimmed. No signature at the bottom. She opened the correspondence file. Lines of emails scrolled past. Damien's name. Phoenix Ridge executives. Their words were polite, coded, but the meaning was clear. Once the crisis clause is in place, one message read, temporary control of key vote rights will move to Horizon Management LLC as discussed. Another, later, use Rowan's credentials to expedite changes. He's been dragging his feet. Once signatures are processed, we proceed with the transition plan. Mara sat very still. She imagined someone packing in a hurry, dropping the USB into the hidden compartment, locking the suitcase, planning to retrieve it later, and then grabbing the wrong bag. You weren't supposed to see this either, she told herself. She copied the files just in case, then closed the laptop. Her decision crystallized with the same clarity she'd felt the day she walked into her old boardroom and told them they were lying to themselves. She was not going to walk away this time. The boardroom smelled faintly of cologne and expensive anxiety. Light poured in from windows on one side, bouncing off polished wood. A carafe of water sat in the middle of the long table, condensation beating on the glass. Damien stood at the screen, pointer in hand, confidence radiating from every smooth sentence. As you can see, he said, the crisis provision ensures stability by moving certain decisions to a neutral entity should volatility exceed predefined thresholds. Around the table, heads nodded. Mara stood near the door, binder hugged to her chest. She felt out of place in her simple blouse, but she stood anyway. Rowan sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Before we finalize anything, he said, cutting into Damien's flow, I want to show you all something. He looked toward Mara. Miss Ellis, he said, if you would. Her pulse jumped. She crossed to the small console, plugged in the USB, and opened the first file on the main screen. This is the version of the merger contract our legal department drafted, she said. It lives in our document system with no signature and no crisis clause, as you've just seen it. She clicked to the next file. This, she said, the version set for signing last week, and note the differences. She zoomed in on the contingency clause. The language had shifted subtly. Temporary control, neutral vehicle, Horizon Management LLC. As you can see, she said, this neutral vehicle is a shell company controlled by Phoenix Ridge's partners. Not neutral at all. A murmur rose, low and uneasy. Damien's jaw tightened. This is highly irregular, he said. You have no authority to. She opened the correspondence file. Lines of emails appeared, blown up large enough that no one could pretend not to see. The metadata shows these changes were made using Mr. Hale's credentials, she said, at a time when he was not logged in. And here we have emails discussing that unauthorized use. She highlighted the relevant lines. Use Rowan's credentials. Expedite changes. Proceed with transition. Someone swore softly under their breath. Damien Rowan said, his voice too calm, do you want to explain why my name is being used in emails I've never seen? Damien's composure cracked for the first time. We are under pressure, he said. You know that. The market doesn't wait for us to get comfortable. Phoenix Ridge offered a way to secure Halecore's future. Sometimes leadership means making ugly decisions for the greater good. By lying to our board, Rowan asked, by doing what your father never had the stomach to do, Damien shot back. He trusted too much. He let sentiment sink him. Do you want to end up the same way? The room went silent. Everyone was watching Rowan now. Mara's heart pounded. She could almost feel the weight of his father's plaque pressing against her back. Words carved into wood. Tell the truth even if it costs you. Rowan looked at the screen, at the emails, at Damien. Then he looked at Mara. In her face, he saw no triumph, just tired conviction. We are not signing this deal, he said. Damien stared. You'd rather what Damien asked. Let competitors carve us up. Lose everything you think these people care if your little community projects die when the funding disappears. He gestured vaguely. In Queens, there is a center that keeps its doors open because of Halecore's little community projects. Mara said quietly. If this deal goes bad, they lose their homework room and their hot meals. That matters as much as your quarterly report. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Rowan's voice was steady when he spoke again. We will find another way to grow, he said. One that doesn't require us to become the thing that broke us the first time. Damien, you're suspended effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Legal and compliance will work with external counsel to audit every deal you've touched in the last 3 years. Damien's face flushed. You're making a mistake, he said. Probably, Rowan said, but it won't be this one. Damien gathered his things with jerky movements and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft, definitive click. The offer came hours later. The boardroom was empty. The screens were blank. Sunlight slanted across the table in long rectangles. Mara stood at the window, looking down at the city, wondering how long it would be before the news leak started. Rowan leaned against the table, arms folded. You didn't have to do that, she said without turning. You could have pretended you never saw that USB. I did see it, he said, thanks to you. She watched a tiny ant-like line of cars crawl along a distant bridge. I keep ending up in rooms like this, she said, telling people things they say they want to hear, and then watching them flinch when it costs something. He was quiet for a moment. I want you to stay, he said. She turned. As your in-house conscience, she asked. On retainer. As Chief Integrity Officer, he replied, we'll build the role around what you do. Forensic oversight, ethics, a permanent seat in that observation room, except you'll be in the boardroom instead. She laughed softly. I appreciate the poetry, she said. But no. He blinked. No, he echoed. I'm tired of being the girl someone pulls in to clean up their mess and then forgets about once the headlines die down, she said. I'm tired of being the story people tell to feel better about themselves. She shook her head. I need to know I can stand on my own decisions, she said. Not just orbit someone else's redemption arc. He studied her. That's fair, he said. I won't pretend it doesn't sting, but it's fair. She picked up the suitcase, their original mistake, now emptied of secrets, and set it on the table. You'll get your bag back tomorrow, she said, with nothing unexpected in it this time. He tried to smile. I'm starting to think the unexpected was the best part, he said. She left before she could say something she wasn't ready to mean. The note she left on his desk the next morning was short. I thought I grabbed the wrong luggage. Maybe this was the right detour. Her own suitcase, a little more battered now, waited by the door of her apartment. Her ticket to Seattle, printed and folded, sat on the table beside her keys. Her mother's voice on the phone had been soft, hopeful. It would be nice to have you close for a while, she'd said, even if it's just for a bit. Mara had said yes before she could talk herself out of it. Now, standing in the doorway of the life she'd built from scraps and stubbornness, she hesitated. The city hummed outside. Car horns, sirens, the muffled thump of music from a neighbor's apartment. She locked the door behind her and carried her suitcase down 3 flights of stairs. At the airport, the check-in line was long, the security line longer. By the time she reached her gate, boarding had begun. She sat in a plastic chair, her suitcase handle under one hand, ticket in the other. Final boarding for flight 227 to Seattle, the gate agent announced. Final call. Mara stood. She took 1 step toward the gate. Miss Ellis. The voice cut across the terminal noise. She turned. Rowan stood at the far end of the seating area, out of breath, tie askew, hair wind-ruffled. In one hand, he clutched her old black suitcase. For a second, all she could think was that he looked wrong here, in this world of yoga pants and neck pillows and stale pretzels. Too sharp, too polished, too exposed. He walked toward her, cutting through the crowd. You have a talent for airports, she said when he reached her. He held up the suitcase. You left this, he said, again. I have a pattern, she replied. The gate agent made another announcement, more pointed. Rowan, she said. Mara, he said at the same time. They both stopped, then both smiled, a little frayed. You shouldn't be here, she said. You have a company to fix. I do, he said. I can't do it, the way I thought I could. He set the suitcase down between them like a neutral party. You were right, he said. About me, about Damien, about what this deal meant. You took a risk calling it out. Again. I can't promise you we won't screw up in other ways. We will, I will, but I can promise one thing. He took a breath. I will not use you as a convenient story, he said. I won't make you my symbol or my shield. I want you there because you make us better, because you make me better, and because, for the first time since my father died, I actually believe someone could stand beside me without waiting to pull the ground out from under my feet. Her chest ached. You have a way with speeches, she said. I'm terrible at them, he replied. I practiced this one in the taxi. It went better in my head. She laughed, the sound wet around the edges. I'm scared, she said quietly, of going back into that world, of trusting that it's different this time. He nodded. I'm scared too, he said, of losing Halecore, of becoming what my father tried not to be, of trusting you and having you decide one day that I'm not worth it. She blinked. You're not supposed to say that part out loud, she said. Maybe that's the point, he said. A pause opened between them, a small, fragile space where something true could live. I need you to understand, he added. This isn't about giving you a favor. That role I offered, it exists now. It will exist whether you take it or not. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want Halecore to have someone whose only job is to ask, are we being honest? And you want that someone to be me, she said. I do, he said. Not because you're convenient, because you're the only person I trust to tell me the answer, even when I don't like it. The boarding line thinned. Final boarding. The agent called. Doors closing shortly. If she walked away now, Mara thought, she'd have a simpler story to tell herself. She tried. She told the truth. The world didn't deserve her. She went home. If she stayed, she'd have to live with mess. With compromise that didn't bend the truth but asked hard questions of everything else. With a man who could hurt her, not by betrayal with numbers, but by being human and fallible and present. She looked at the suitcase between them, scuffed and ordinary. A wrong pick that had landed her in boardrooms, on stormy coasts, at kitchen tables with old ghosts. She stepped away from the gate. The agent sighed and closed the boarding door. You missed your flight, Rowan said. Maybe, she said. Or maybe I just finally caught the right one. He smiled, something relieved and open loosening his face. Does that mean, he began? Don't ruin it with a pitch, she said. He laughed, and it sounded like something breaking open inside his chest. She picked up the suitcase and turned toward the exit. Come on, she said. If I'm going to help you build a conscience into your company, you're at least buying me dinner. Deal, he said. They walked side by side toward whatever came next. 1 year later, a new line glowed under the Halecore logo in the lobby. Truth is our first asset. No one would claim it was perfect. Mistakes still happened. Deals still fell through. Markets still swung like temperamental bombs. But when a summer intern pointed out a discrepancy in a small fund's reporting, she wasn't told to mind her place. She was called into a meeting, thanked, and told to keep asking questions. In Queens, the community center's sign had been repainted. The homework room hummed with kids bent over worksheets. The kitchen smelled like soup. June sat at a table, sorting donated books. Mara and Rowan stood in the doorway, watching. You did good, June told Mara on the way out. You brought the scary money people to our side. Mara laughed. Trust me, she said. They were probably more scared of you. On the porch of a modest house outside the city, a black suitcase sat on a wooden crate. Its handle had been removed. Holes drilled in the bottom for drainage. Soil filled its belly. White daisies spilled over the edges, nodding in the breeze. A small metal tag hung from the handle bracket. Wrong gate, right life. Mara knelt beside it, tucking a stray stem back into place. Think it's weird that our most sentimental decor used to hold someone else's socks, she asked. Rowan, carrying 2 mugs of coffee, shook his head. I think it's fitting. he said. We turned a mistake into something that grows. He set the mugs down and sat on the step beside her. Laughter drifted from inside the house. Friends, colleagues, people who had seen the worst of both of them and decided to stay anyway. So he said, any regrets? Plenty, she replied. Just not about this. He slipped his hand into hers. We can still catch a flight to Seattle one day, he said. You know, when we're not putting out fires, we will, she said, on our own terms. She leaned her head against his shoulder. For a long time, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the daisies sway, listening to the quiet. The world was still loud and sharp and often dishonest. But here, Steve, on this small porch with a repurposed suitcase and a man who had chosen truth even when it hurt, Mara felt something she hadn't in a very long time. Not safety. That was too fragile, too conditional. Something deeper. Belonging. And for her, that was worth all the wrong luggage in the world.